Let's be honest, we're living in a time when falling in love feels more terrifying than ever. And it's strange, right? Because we talk about love all the time. We post quotes about it, write songs about it, binge watch entire seasons of people chasing it. But when it comes to actually letting someone in, most of us freeze, we hesitate, we sabotage. I've spoken to thousands of people, from those navigating their first heartbreak to others who haven't let anyone get close in years, and the story is eerily similar. It's just not safe anymore. But what's really behind this fear? Why are we so afraid to fall in love now, in a world that claims to crave connection more than ever? Today I want to unpack that, not to judge it, but to understand it. Because once we understand the fear, we can finally stop letting it drive our lives. Somewhere along the way, being vulnerable started to feel like a mistake, like a weakness we couldn't afford. We live in a world that constantly tells us to be strong, independent, self-sufficient, and those are good things. But in the process, we've misunderstood what strength actually looks like in relationships. Being guarded isn't strong, it's just safe. And being safe isn't the same as being loved. The truth is, love requires you to show up, not as a curated version of yourself, not as the one who always has it together, but as the real, unfiltered you. The version of you that has fears, baggage, quirks, imperfections. And that kind of presence, that kind of openness is vulnerable. It's risky. Because once someone sees who you really are, you give them the power to hurt you. And for a lot of people, that's too much. So instead we wear armor, emotional armor. We downplay our feelings, act casual when we care deeply, and pretend we're fine when we're really just scared. We tell ourselves that if we don't care too much, we won't get hurt. That if we keep our hearts locked behind walls, nothing can break them. But here's the problem. The same walls that protect you from pain also block you from connection. You can't selectively numb emotions. If you try to shut off hurt, you end up shutting off joy, love, intimacy, the very things we claim to be looking for. And it's not just individuals doing this, it's become a cultural norm. We celebrate detachment. We idolize the idea of not needing anyone. We reward the ability to move on fast or not catch feelings. But underneath that cool exterior is often someone who's terrified to feel anything real. Because real feelings mean real risk. What's tragic is that we don't always realize we're doing it. Some people think they're just being smart by keeping their guard up. They say things like, "I'm just being careful," or "I've been hurt before." And fair enough, maybe they have. Maybe they loved someone once and that person shattered their trust. Or maybe they grew up in an environment where emotional vulnerability was never safe. But whatever the reason, that fear starts to shape their entire approach to love. It's not that we don't want connection. Most people deeply crave love. But the moment we get close to something that could matter, we pull back. We send mixed signals. We ghost. We push people away before they get the chance to disappoint us. It's like we'd rather sabotage something early than risk being left later. We're not afraid of love itself. We're afraid of what love demands: courage, emotional exposure, uncertainty. But here's the thing, vulnerability isn't weakness. Vulnerability is showing up when you don't know what the outcome will be. It's saying, "I care," when you don't know if the other person feels the same. It's reaching out when your ego would rather stay silent. That's strength. That's emotional bravery. And ironically, it's also the only way to experience love in its truest form. The people who are most afraid to fall in love now aren't cold or heartless. They're just exhausted from being disappointed. They're tired of giving and not receiving. They're scared that being open will just lead to more pain. But if they want something different, something real, the answer isn't less vulnerability, it's more of it. Controlled, intentional, but still honest. Because love doesn't happen behind walls. It happens in the space where two people put down their shields and say, "Here I am, take me as I am." Dating today feels more like navigating a minefield than building a connection. It's supposed to be exciting, a chance to meet someone new, share moments, maybe even fall in love. But more often than not, it feels like a confusing game where no one's quite sure of the rules and everyone's afraid to lose. You send a message, and wait hours for a reply. Someone flirts with you intensely one day and goes cold the next. You think you're building something real, and suddenly they vanish. No explanation, no closure. This is the modern dating culture, and it's exhausting. We've created an environment where uncertainty is the norm, where playing it cool has become more important than being honest, where showing interest is seen as weakness and withholding emotion is considered smart strategy. People talk about being chill or unbothered like it's a virtue, but underneath that facade, most people are simply afraid. Afraid of coming on too strong, afraid of being the one who cares more, afraid of putting their heart on the line and getting nothing back. So instead of expressing ourselves honestly, we play roles. We pretend not to care when we do. We wait twice as long to reply because we don't want to seem too eager. We date with one foot out the door just in case someone better comes along. And we do all this because we've been taught that if we're too open, we'll lose power, as if dating is about control instead of connection. And then we wonder why it feels so hard to trust anyone. This isn't just about individual behavior, it's systemic. Technology has completely changed how we date. With endless options at our fingertips, it's easy to treat people like disposable experiences. Someone doesn't tick all our boxes, immediately on to the next. We don't like how a conversation is going, just stop replying. There's little accountability, little investment, and even less patience. We're constantly looking over the person in front of us to see who else might be waiting in the wings. That kind of abundance sounds freeing, but in reality, it breeds anxiety and insecurity. When no one is willing to commit to the moment, when everyone's keeping their options open, no connection can deepen. It stays surface level, and after a while, that starts to feel incredibly lonely. Even if you're going on dates, getting attention, or matching with tons of people, you can still feel completely disconnected. Because real connection doesn't come from a match. It comes from effort, presence, and consistency. And in a dating culture driven by instant gratification and fear of vulnerability, those qualities are becoming rare. The worst part is this environment teaches us to be suspicious even when something good does come along. You meet someone who's genuine, who communicates clearly, who doesn't play games, and your first instinct is to doubt it. You wonder, what's the catch? Because we've been conditioned to expect flakiness, to anticipate disappointment. And that mindset becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We push away the people who show up because we don't trust that they'll stay. We test them, we hold back, and eventually they leave, not because they weren't real, but because they were tired of trying to break down a wall they didn't build. We've made dating into a game where everyone's trying to win, but no one knows what the prize actually is. And somewhere along the way, we lost sight of the goal. Connection, partnership, love. Not a perfect person, not endless options, not power. Just two people choosing each other consistently without games. Until we start dating with that intention, we'll keep repeating the same cycles. Confused, frustrated, and afraid to fall for anyone at all. We live in a world where perfection is everywhere, or at least the illusion of it. Social media has created a constant highlight reel of people's lives, relationships, and even their personalities. We scroll through endless images of couples laughing on vacation, partners writing poetic captions about their soulmates, and people posting their ideal relationship goals. And slowly, whether we realize it or not, we start to believe that love should look like that. We start to think that if it's not effortless, flawless, or fireworks from day one, then maybe it's not the right person. Maybe there's someone better out there, someone more exciting, someone with fewer flaws. This mindset has created a dangerous belief system that love should be instant and easy, and that if you're with the right person, everything will fall perfectly into place. So we chase an ideal rather than build something real. We measure people against a checklist of traits that were probably inspired more by movies and influencers than by actual emotional compatibility. And when someone doesn't meet every one of our expectations right away, we pull back, we swipe left, we walk away, telling ourselves it just didn't feel right, when in reality, we didn't give it enough time to feel anything real at all. This fear of settling, which on the surface seems empowering, often ends up robbing us of the chance to grow something meaningful. We've confused not settling with never compromising, and those are not the same thing. Every real relationship involves compromise, patience, and sometimes discomfort. But when we're addicted to perfection, we expect love to feel like a movie scene instead of understanding that deep connection is often quiet, slow, and built over time. The truth is, no one is perfect, not you, not me, not the person you're hoping to meet. But perfection isn't the point. Compatibility is, respect is, shared values, communication, emotional safety. These things matter so much more than whether someone has the exact height, body type, lifestyle, or social media presence we imagined. But because we're constantly exposed to curated, polished images of people's lives, we've started to value the image over the substance. And the irony is, the people we admire most, the couples we see thriving, they didn't find perfection, they created connection, they chose each other through the hard conversations, the boring days, the miscommunications, the seasons of doubt. Real love is not about finding the perfect person. It's about being willing to work through imperfections with someone who's also willing to work with you. But when we believe in the fantasy of the perfect person, we never let things get deep enough to discover what's truly possible. We keep starting over with new people, always hoping the next one will finally be the one who checks every box. And in that cycle, we rob ourselves of the richness that comes from commitment, effort, and emotional intimacy. What most people are afraid of isn't love, it's disappointment. It's the idea that they'll invest in someone only to find out later that the person isn't who they hope for. So instead of risking that, they keep it light, they keep it safe. But real love doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from taking the risk that someone imperfect might still be exactly what you need. Not because they're everything you dreamed of, but because they're someone you can build something beautiful with. Flaws, growth, and all. And so we let go of the myth of the perfect person. We'll keep chasing something that doesn't exist and missing out on the very real, very human kind of love that does. Heartbreak used to be seen as a natural part of life, a painful one, yes, but also a rite of passage. Something that taught you, shaped you, and helped you grow. But now it's become something else. Heartbreak today feels more like a red flag, a caution sign people carry around, warning others and themselves not to get too close again. We've turned heartbreak into a reason to avoid love entirely, rather than a wound that heals and eventually leads us to something better. The problem is that heartbreak cuts deep. It doesn't just hurt, it shakes your belief in love itself. When you give your heart to someone and they walk away, or when things fall apart after you gave everything you had, it creates a lasting impact. You start to question your judgment, you wonder if love is even worth it. And slowly your heart starts to close off. Not because you don't want to love again, but because the memory of that pain lingers, whispering, "Don't do that again, it's not safe." So we adapt, we build walls, we become cautious, we say things like, "I'm just focusing on myself right now," or "I'm not ready for anything serious." And maybe that's true, but often it's also a shield, a way to avoid having to face that same pain again. The idea of opening up to someone new feels exhausting, even dangerous, because if heartbreak happened once, what's stopping it from happening again? But here's the thing most people forget. Heartbreak is not a sign that love doesn't work. It's a sign that it did mean something. It hurt because it mattered. And as painful as that is, it also proves you're capable of loving deeply, of caring fully, of risking something real. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's bravery. Yet we've started to treat heartbreak as a kind of failure instead of the inevitable byproduct of taking a chance on someone. The fear of going through it again convinces people to stay on the sidelines, to keep their feelings casual, to protect themselves by never really showing up in the first place. But love doesn't exist on the sidelines. It's found in the mess, in the risk, the vulnerability, the moments when you let someone in knowing full well they could hurt you. That's the deal. You can't experience the full beauty of love without accepting the potential for pain. We've been taught to avoid pain at all costs, and emotionally, that's where a lot of people stay stuck. They never allow themselves to go deep again. They date, they flirt, they play the part, but they never really invest. Because if they never invest, they'll never lose anything. But that's not protection, that's isolation. That's living with a locked heart. And eventually, it becomes a kind of loneliness that no amount of distractions can fix. Healing from heartbreak doesn't mean swearing off love forever. It means understanding what happened, learning from it, and still choosing to believe that love is worth it. Because the alternative, living a life where you never let anyone in again, is not safer. It's just colder, less meaningful. You might avoid heartbreak, but you also avoid connection, joy, intimacy, and the kind of love that makes life richer. Yes, love can hurt, and yes, sometimes it breaks you open in ways you didn't expect. But it also heals, transforms, and makes you feel more alive than anything else. The goal isn't to never feel pain. It's to get strong enough to know you can survive it and still love again. When you remember that, you stop letting heartbreak be a stop sign. You let it be a stepping stone, one that leads you closer to the love you actually deserve. One of the biggest reasons people are afraid to fall in love today is that love requires something most of us are terrified to give: the willingness to be truly seen, not just liked, admired, or followed, seen. And that level of exposure can feel overwhelming, especially in a world where so much of our identity is carefully crafted and filtered. We spend years building an image, online, at work, even in our personal lives. We show the best parts, the polished version, the highlight reel. But love, it doesn't want your performance, it wants your reality. When someone falls in love with you, not the version of you that shows up in public or on Instagram, but the raw, real, vulnerable you, that's when it starts to matter. But for many people, that's also when the panic sets in. Because when someone truly sees you, they also see your mess. They see your insecurities, your flaws, your baggage, your emotional scars. And if you've spent years covering those things up or pretending they don't exist, the idea of letting someone close enough to notice them can be terrifying. We all want to be loved, but most of us carry a secret fear that if someone really knew us, the whole truth, they wouldn't love us. That deep down, we're not enough, or we're too much, or we're somehow unlovable in our most honest form. So what do? We keep a distance. We give just enough to keep things feeling warm, but not enough to make them real. We show interest, but not investment. We let people see what's safe, not what's true. It's not because we're dishonest, it's because we're afraid. This fear isn't always loud. Sometimes it shows up as perfectionism, the belief that if we can just be impressive enough, successful enough, attractive enough, we'll earn love without having to reveal the messy stuff. Other times it shows up as detachment, staying emotionally unavailable so we never risk being judged or hurt. But the result is the same. We avoid the kind of closeness that love actually demands. And the irony is, real intimacy, the kind of closeness that actually makes love feel fulfilling, only happens when we drop the act, when we stop editing ourselves for approval and start allowing someone to know the real us. That doesn't mean oversharing or being emotionally chaotic. It means being honest. It means saying, this is who I am. I've got my strengths, but I've also got my fears. Can you still love me here? But that kind of honesty requires self-acceptance first. If you haven't made peace with your own imperfections, it's hard to believe someone else will. That's why the fear of being seen is often rooted in a deeper fear, not being able to accept yourself. And the moment someone starts to get close, that fear gets triggered. You start thinking, what if they see this part of me and leave? What if I'm too damaged, too complicated, too emotional? So you pull back, you sabotage, you ghost, or you distance, or you convince yourself the connection wasn't that deep anyway. But the truth is, the connection scared you because it was real. Falling in love asks you to take off your mask, to show up in your truth and risk someone seeing all of it, not just the beautiful parts. And yes, that's scary, but it's also where the real magic happens. Because the moment you let someone see you and they choose to stay, that's when love stops being conditional. That's when it stops being something you earn and starts being something you receive. Not because you were perfect, but because you were honest, and that was enough. One of the most deeply rooted fears people have about falling in love today is that it won't last. And not just that it might not last, but that it's almost guaranteed not to. We've seen so many relationships fall apart, marriages ending, long-term couples splitting, families breaking down. It's everywhere, in our own lives, in the lives of people we know, and all over the media. So we start to ask ourselves, what's the point? Why give so much of yourself to something that might just fall apart? This fear runs deeper than just pessimism. It's a survival mechanism. If we believe that love always ends, then we can avoid the pain of having it and losing it. We tell ourselves that we're just being realistic, that it's smart not to expect too much, that we're protecting ourselves. But what we're really doing is robbing ourselves of the very thing we claim to want: real connection. Love today is treated almost like a gamble, like you're betting everything on something unstable. And in a way, that's true. Love is uncertain. There are no guarantees. You can do everything right and still end up with a broken heart. But we've made the mistake of thinking that unless love lasts forever, it doesn't count. That if it ends, it was a failure. And that's simply not true. Some of the most important, transformative, soul-shaping love stories don't last a lifetime, but they still matter. They still leave a mark. They still teach us something about ourselves, about intimacy, about what we value. The idea that only forever love is real. Love is a narrow and often harmful belief. It causes people to undervalue meaningful connections just because they didn't go the distance. That said, it's completely understandable why people fear the ending. Letting someone all the way in means they have the power to leave. And when you've experienced abandonment, betrayal, or disappointment in the past, even once, it can feel like letting that happen again would destroy you. So many people build a kind of emotional shield around themselves, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. They tell themselves they're fine alone. They convince themselves they don't need anyone. But underneath that is often a quiet ache, the desire to love and be loved without fear. Here's the truth. Love has never been a sure thing. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. But that doesn't make it any less valuable. What makes love worth it isn't the promise that it will never end. It's what you experience while it's there. It's who you become in the presence of someone who sees you, supports you, challenges you, and believes in you. That kind of connection can change you, even if it doesn't last forever. We need to stop measuring love by its length and start measuring it by its depth. Did it make you feel alive? Did it teach you something? Did it help you grow? Did it open your heart even for a moment? Those are the things that matter. That's what makes love real. Not how long it stayed, but how deeply it touched you. Fearing that love won't last is natural, but if that fear stops you from ever trying, then you've already lost something greater. You've lost the chance to experience a kind of connection that no amount of guarding or safety can replace. Love is a risk, always, but so is living fully. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to show up, open your heart, and love anyway. Not because you're sure it will last, but because you know that while it does, it will be worth it. We live in a time where everyone talks about love, but few are truly open to it. Not because we don't want it, but because we're scared. Scared of being hurt, of being disappointed, of not being enough, or of losing something we worked so hard to find. But love was never supposed to be safe. It was never supposed to be predictable. Love asks something from us. Not perfection, but presence. Not control, but courage. And yes, there's risk. There's always risk. But avoiding love doesn't spare you from pain. It just guarantees a different kind of emptiness. A quiet kind. The kind that creeps in when you're with someone but feel alone. Or when you're surrounded by options but starving for connection. So if you've been holding back, playing it cool, or waiting for the perfect moment or person before you open up, maybe it's time to do the scariest thing of all. Show up as yourself. Let someone see you. Not the polished, filtered, or rehearsed version. The real one. Because only when you're brave enough to be seen can you ever be truly loved. And that, more than anything, is what makes the fall worth it.